I want to begin just by noting the enormous human impact that this war is having on people, particularly in Iran and Lebanon. Because in Lebanon, we see, as a result of the Israeli bombardment of that country, the displacement of around a quarter of the Lebanese population. Proportionally speaking, that level of displacement is equivalent to 2 times the population of Greater London.
Hello and welcome to Equals, the podcast about inequality. I'm Grazielli.
And I'm Max. Yeah, welcome back to Equals. Today we are going to be addressing a topic that is very much at the forefront of everyone's mind, which is the ongoing war and the impact of the war on ordinary people everywhere.
Yeah, it's true. It's affecting all of us. First, very directly, the people who are there. Just a few days, I saw a message from a colleague when she lives in Lebanon, and she was writing, I have just been bombed out of my home. I'm outside with my kid. I don't know what's going to happen now, and this is strong. But beyond that, and in other peoples, in all of us, there are also the global economic effects that are reaching everybody.
Yes, there's the kind of immediate human costs, and yeah, we've got many colleagues involved, but also the economic impacts, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the way the conflict is disrupting energy markets, food markets, financial markets, and what that's going to do to ordinary people.
And I believe that the key question of this episode is who is benefiting and profiting from this war and who is paying the price.
And to look at this, we're going to be interviewing Professor Adam and Hanieh from SOAS here in London, who's an expert on the Middle East, and he's going to be talking about the impacts of the war. And I should say, so no one's surprised, the interview is actually Annie and you, Grazie, wasn't it? But Annie's not around to do this wrap up, so I've jumped in to help. But yeah, just to let people know. So let's get into the interview. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, let's go. Adam, it's fantastic to have you here with us today. And I'm wondering if you could start by introducing yourself to our listeners and telling us a little bit about how you came to where you are today in your career and what has sparked your interest in capitalism and the climate crisis.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this discussion. I've had a long interest in the Middle East region for much of my life. I'm of Palestinian background, and I also have lived and worked in the occupied West Bank for a number of years. And through that experience, I gained a very deep awareness, I think, of the role of the Gulf states in particular in the politics and economics of the Middle East. So it's that kind of interest in particularly those Gulf states that led me to completing a PhD on the Gulf monarchies and to look in particular at how the capitalism in those states emerged through the 20th century up until more recent times. And looking and working on the Gulf state, it became very evident to me that the key question, of course, here is oil and gas and energy that is linked very much to the climate emergency that we see unfolding in our world today. So I really believe that we need, I think, as climate activists to think much more about the role of the Gulf states in the climate emergency, because these states are major exporters, the leading exporters of oil and gas. And yet I think in a lot of the discussions we hear about in climate movements globally, these states are ignored. My current position, I'm working at SOAS in the University of London as director of the SOAS Middle East Institute and also a professor at SOAS. And I'm trying from that position to bring some of these global questions to the study of the Middle East, but also I think to allow the Middle East to speak to these bigger global concerns that we face.
Adam, you recently wrote an article in The Guardian about how the unlawful attacks by Israel and the United States and Iran's response, which is triggering a huge rise in oil costs, will have unintended consequences for both inequality and geopolitics. Could you tell us about how global shocks like this deepen inequality around the world and what the long-term implications for people might be?
Well, I think it's very important to perhaps look back at other moments of crisis over the last few decades. We can think back, for example, to the 2008-2009 global economic shock, or the recent COVID-19 pandemic. And at these moments, it's become, I think it's very evident that it's always the most vulnerable, whether that be vulnerable communities or countries in the global south in particular, that are hit most severely at moments of crises. And this is because the most vulnerable have less ability to cushion the economic effects of these crises. They have less ability to draw upon their savings. States in the global south have less fiscal space in which to deal with crises of this magnitude. And also, very importantly, the policy responses that we often see at moments of crisis is to basically accelerate, unfortunately, economic and political measures that serve the most powerful. And this is, again, I think, very evident from the wake of the 2008 crisis and also the COVID pandemic. Remember, for instance, the 2007 and 2008 food price spike that preceded the global crisis. There were an estimated 100 million people pushed into poverty at that moment. So I think this is really a key thing in thinking about how this current war might unfold, whether it be through an economic shock, a global economic shock that we're already seeing begin, or whether it be through other kinds of transmission mechanisms, whether it be food or remittances and so forth.
And you wrote in that article that oil prices alone don't capture the full economic significance of the conflict. Can you tell us what you meant by this?
In answering that question, what we really need to understand is a major change that has taken place in the Gulf over the last decade or so. Over the last decade, their role in the global economy has changed very profoundly. This has a lot to do with the emergence of China as a major manufacturing center. And what China's rise did from the early 2000s onwards is basically shift the export of the Gulf's oil and gas eastward. No longer do these energy exports from the region go west to Europe or the United States. They go east predominantly. About 80% or so of the region's exports flow to China and wider East Asia. And this shift in global oil really also accelerated the large financial surpluses, the wealth that accumulated in the Gulf, because there was a big increase in global exports of oil and gas associated with this eastward shift. And a lot of this wealth has been reinvested by big Gulf energy firms into the diversification of their activities. So they're no longer simply producers of oil and gas. They are also major producers of other global chemicals and plastics and fertilizers. And this is really something new, if you like, about the Gulf's role in the world economy. So just to give you some examples of what I mean of this kind of diversification, if we think about, for example, basic plastics like polyethylene and polypropylene that feed into all of the world's production, they're in our clothes that we wear, the packaging that we use. About 40% of global exports of these essential chemicals come from the Middle East, from the Gulf region in particular. Another example is sulfur. 45% of global sulfur exports come from the Gulf. Now, why is this important? Sulfur is a key ingredient in the manufacture of fertilizers. And it is also a key ingredient in mining activities because it's used to leach metals. So, for instance, Indonesia, which is a major nickel producer, depends upon the Gulf for about 75% of its sulfur that is used to make sulfuric acid and help leach nickel so it can be used in electric vehicle batteries and so forth. A really important further example of this is fertilizers. About a third of the world's fertilizers pass through the Strait of Hormuz, and this is absolutely critical, therefore, to food and agricultural systems around the world. If we see potential restrictions of those fertilizer exports, we will not only see potential rises in the price of food, we could actually see also supply shortages of fertilizer itself. So again, we need to think about this crisis way beyond simply what's happening to the oil prices, but think about these other kinds of commodities and their potential impact on the most vulnerable across the global south.
So if governments continue to rely on oil, what are the costs and what will be the costs, both human and economic?
Well, I think we can think about this perhaps in three ways. Firstly, I want to begin just by noting the enormous human impact that this war is having on people in the region, particularly in Iran and Lebanon, which have borne the brunt of the US-Israeli attacks over the last few weeks. In both those countries, we see enormous levels of destruction of basic infrastructure that is necessary for life. In fact, we see in the last few days the threats by the Trump administration, which most experts consider to be war crimes, the threat to destroy infrastructures such as bridges, energy production units, as well as sanitation and other key infrastructure in Iran. I also want to highlight the situation in Lebanon, which I don't think has received the attention that it deserves, because in Lebanon we see, as a result of the Israeli bombardment of that country, the displacement of around a quarter of the Lebanese population. And this is really extraordinary when we think that, proportionally speaking, that level of displacement is equivalent to 2 times the population of Greater London. Of course, we need to remember that many of those who have been displaced would find it difficult to move, whether they're infirm or they're elderly or they're very young. So the human cost of this is really, I think, extraordinary, and to me, it's shocking that it hasn't received much attention in the world's media. And on top of this, we need to recognize that there is already existing a large levels of displacement in the region. In fact, the largest mass displacement globally is located in the Middle East. So these are all, I think, aspects of the way that the war is directly impacting the people in the region that I think need to be thought about much more deeply. So that's the first side. The second side, though, I think, is the way in which the war itself is going to have some longer-term effects. One of these is the ecological consequences of the waging of war itself. War is a major source of carbon emissions. There was an excellent report that came out a couple of weeks ago that looked at the carbon emissions released in just the first 2 weeks of this current war. And it found that the emissions released in just the first 2 weeks of the war were equivalent to the global annual emissions of a country like Iceland. So again, the war obviously has continued much longer than when that report was first released, but we can be absolutely certain that this war will be responsible for a major increase in global carbon emissions. And then the third kind of longer term cost that I think it's really important to consider here is the way in which the kinds of patterns that I described earlier, the role of the Gulf in the wider global economy, will ricochet or cascade down global supply chains, in particular in the potential impacts on food.
Whoa, all these human, environmental, economic effects, they are very serious and shocking. What could and should countries be doing in a different way?
Well, I think there's a number of things that really need to be highlighted here. The first of these is that, and coming back to the first point that we discussed, it's the most vulnerable that always are hit the hardest at these particular moments. So that means that we need a global response to these potential impacts. The response can't simply be double down on fossil fuel production and close the hatches and try to solve these problems within our individual borders. There needs to be a global response, one that ensures that these impacts don't hit the poorest countries and peoples in the most severe ways. So that's the first thing I would say, is we need that global response. Secondly, I think the war really does illustrate how critical it is to move away from our fossil fuel-centered world order. Oil and militarism are deeply linked at the hip. This is true both in the waging of war, but also the climate consequences of war. So I do think that what this war really illustrates is the need to accelerate a move away from fossil fuel production and to really wind down those companies that are responsible for this energy order. And then the third point relates to what I've just said, is that this war is not impacting everyone in the same kinds of ways. And in fact, there are some actors that are actively benefiting from the war itself, whether it be fossil fuel firms, oil companies, gas companies that are benefiting from the huge spike in energy prices that we've seen and that will likely continue over this year, or the military companies that have seen accelerated orders for their hardware as a result of the war. So it's these kinds of firms that are really benefiting from the destruction and the killing of life that I've outlined that I think need to be tackled. They need to be dismantled, wound down, and their resources utilized for actually addressing massive inequalities that we see globally, and as of course the impact of the climate crisis itself. So those are some of the things I think governments need to do differently. And most immediately, of course, we need to call for and demand an end to the US-Israeli war on the peoples of the region, because as we've spoken about, the impact of this is so destructive on life, on food, on peoples of the global south, and of course on the climate itself.
Absolutely. And are there any countries that are paving the way?
Well, to be honest, don't see any kind of real responses that are taking into account those strategies and I think those necessities that I've just spoken about. Obviously, different regions and countries have greater capacities to deal with the impact of this crisis. Wealthier countries in Europe, China, the United States, to a certain degree as well, are able to to some degree ameliorate the potential impact on their citizens. But as I've noted, I do think that there is a problem with this kind of battening down the hatches and trying just to address this problem within our individual countries. There has to be a global response. And that, I think, points to the importance of civil society organizations and social movements at a global level really rising to this occasion and demanding that this crisis isn't one that resembles the implications of crises like the 2008 crisis, which really did cascade through the poorer parts of the global south in very severe ways.
Thanks, Adam. Is there anything that you want to add before we finish?
I think another area that hasn't been or hasn't received adequate attention in the coverage of the region and of the war is the potential impacts that this crisis might have on migrant workers in the Gulf states. What is often not well recognized is that the majority of the labor force in each of the Gulf monarchies, Saudi Arabia and the UAE and other Gulf states, is made up of temporary migrant workers drawn from surrounding regions, whether it be South Asia or the African continent or the wider Middle East. So more than half of the labor force in the Gulf is made up of temporary migrant workers, and the remittances that these workers send home are a crucial lifeline to many surrounding countries because they reach families and households in India and Pakistan, in the Philippines, Egypt, and elsewhere. So I think another kind of transmission belt through which this crisis might unfold, the impact of this war might unfold, is its potential and any kind of potential downturn in the Gulf, which will see a curtailment of these remittance flows, or see the deportation and sending home of these migrant workers. In this way, the crisis will be transmitted to the countrysides of those labor-sending regions in places like I've just outlined. So this is exactly what has happened in earlier downturns, like the 2008 downturn, which, when it hit the Gulf region, was associated with mass deportation of migrant workers from the Gulf, or indeed the COVID crisis. Similarly, we saw an impact on remittance flows coming out of the Gulf. So in all these ways, what happens in the Gulf doesn't stay in the Gulf. It really does cascade throughout the global economy. And once again, it's the most vulnerable that feel the directs most severely.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much.
If you allow me, may I make one question out of curiosity? I live in Brazil, and Brazil is part of the BRICS. And one of the things that we're hearing here in the media is that some of these effects of the reliance on oil don't have such a big impact here, because Brazil has some alternatives of fossil fuels, and also because being part of the BRICS, which Iran is also, they are having more openness. How do you see this? Do you really see this bloc as something that is getting stronger in this process?
I'm skeptical that the BRICS really represent like a unified, if you like, alternative or a different kind of model of development, in the sense that the countries involved have quite different and often quite hostile relations to one another. And this is, evident. India and China, for instance, is a clear example there. So in that respect, I think it's an open question how this war might impact that kind of institution, whether it brings them closer together and whether they constitute some kind of alternative global pole, or whether it actually is unable or unwilling to present a kind of alternative to the mainstream international financial institutions. So I am skeptical that we'll see BRICS take that more active role. And I think it really depends upon how long this crisis continues, whether somewhere like Brazil would be able to insulate itself from these bigger global questions in the context of higher energy prices or higher commodity prices, increased borrowing costs. I don't think Brazil in the longer term would be able to insulate itself completely from those global trends.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Wow, that was a really good interview on such an important topic of today. I mean, there's so much in it, but I think the thing that always strikes me is really worth remembering in any situation like this is that the majority of people are impacted negatively by this war, but there are some people who are going to benefit enormously financially, companies, individuals, that not just from the war itself directly, but also from the kind of economic chaos that's created. I'm thinking of speculators in financial markets, or fossil fuel companies, as he says, and lots of people are going to benefit from this war, and focusing on the winners as well as the losers is really important in understanding what's happening. How about you, Gracie? What stuck out for you?
Yeah, for me, something that really called my attention is that besides talking about the oil effect on everyone, he also was telling us about something that sometimes is forgotten on this, which is how war affects the climate, and also how this process is affecting the fertilizers offered to the world, because a lot comes from the region. So this might have a huge impact on hunger in the next few months.
Yes, oh, definitely. I mean, I know from friends in Malawi, for instance, I often help them every year. I help them buy fertilizer, and already the price is shooting up. And the impact is not on their food now; it's on how much food they can harvest in kind of January, February next year. So there's going to be a real delayed impact where people are unable to put fertilizer on their crops, or they can't afford as much as they would normally, and then as a result, there won't be as much food grown or harvested, and then you're going to see spikes in hunger months from now, even if the conflict is over. So yeah, there's going to be some big impacts on ordinary people, and it's going to be really bad, particularly when you think that this is the third serious crisis since the decade began. And it's that compounding. And, if you like, imagine someone punches you, you fall over, you manage to get up, and then they punch you again, and then you fall over, and you just about got on your feet again, and then you're knocked to the floor once more. So it really is that compound impact on ordinary people, and the cost of staying alive. It's hard to exaggerate how negative that's going to be. And I'm sure we'll cover it in future episodes more, but really good to get this initial analysis and begin to understand how it works.
Absolutely. War is not limited by region and not limited by time too, as we can see. The effects remain. That's why we need the war to end.
Indeed. Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. Do tune in to our next episode and stick with Equals. I hope you're enjoying it. Give us any feedback as well, or any people you think we should interview. But yeah, until the next time, thanks everyone.
Thank you, and you can find us on www.equals.inc. Talk to you soon.
Thanks very much. Bye now.
Bye.